Thank you so much for being here. And first, we'll have you introduce yourselves. I'll start with a few questions, but of course, we're asking our participants to ask questions as well. So be ready in chat for your questions. So if you could introduce yourself, name your major on your campus, what positions you've held within your chapter, within ALD, and sort of what you're doing now, because some of you have had positions over the last couple of years and are doing something different now. So if everybody could do that, and we're going to start with Moira at Kent State.
Hi, everyone. My name is Moira Armstrong. I use they, them pronouns. I am from Kent State University. In the past, I've been the programming chair and the president of the chapter, and right now I am the senior advisor.
Great. Aaron, how about you?
Hey guys, hi. My name is Aaron James Arquero, but feel free to just call me James. I'm the chapter president at the American University of Sharjah, which actually happens to be the first international ALD chapter. Totally exciting, and I'm so excited to be here with everybody and connect with you guys.
Thank you. And sorry, I knew to call you James, but I was reading the script and I read Aaron. So thank you, James. Hannah.
All right, hey guys, my name is Hannah Cleary and I am a senior at the University of Kentucky. In the past, I held the position of chapter president, and then last year, junior advisor, and now this year I'm serving in the role as a senior advisor.
Great. And Jesus.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jesus Martinez. I am a two-time president for the Alpha Lambda Delta chapter of Sam Houston State University here in Huntsville, Texas. I am currently a junior here studying broadcast journalism and a minor in Spanish.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you again all for being here and offering your advice and talking a little bit about your experiences. So let's just start. Let's start on a positive high note in terms of your experience with ALD. Talk a little bit about maybe just what motivated you to even join ALD, motivated you to become an officer, and then any sort of highlight regarding any of the positions you've had. Was there sort of a program you're most proud of, an initiative that your group of officers initiated as a program or event on campus? And we're going to start with Jesus for this one.
Yeah, so basically for me, the biggest part or the best part of being president for these 2 years, is my second year now, is getting to see especially this year, the members that were inducted last year become officers this year and see their ambition. And I really see my ambition when I was a new inductee into them. And I really joined ALD, not only for the great benefits ALD offers, but also to get involved in the community as well, especially in Sam Houston State University. We're a university of 21,000 people or students within Huntsville, Texas. So basically we're a community within the community. So we really try to core our volunteer and socializations towards the university. So that's one of the biggest reasons I joined.
Great. And James, who I should also note, as Erica did in chat, he is on the other side of the world, from the US anyway, and it is late there, is it not? What time is it for you?
It's actually 10 p.m. right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's not too bad.
Not too late, yeah.
So go ahead.
Well, yeah, for me, I'm a naturally outgoing person, so I love meeting new people. And when I found out that ALD, you can really tap into a family of ambitious, kind of academically gifted students, that was definitely a real pull for me. I knew that that was something that I want to tap into and just connect with as much people as I can. That was the primary thing that motivated me to joining ALD. And then when I found out about these officer positions, I knew that I wanted to maximize this opportunity and make a positive change in my community. So for me, that was my reasonings for joining and applying to be an officer.
Awesome, great, thanks. How about Hannah?
Yeah, so my story is a little, I guess you could say, unique. So the year I actually was president was the first year that our chapter was back on campus after being dormant for 4 or 5 years. So what happened was we had an interest meeting for those students who I don't know how accepted this invitation, and it wasn't even really an org on campus. So we accepted that invitation, and then they were like, okay, well, we need a leadership team to run it. And in the past, I always go for the low hanging fruits, like the easy wins for me, you know, like, oh, well, I know I can be secretary, so like that's what I'm going to apply for. But I really wanted to challenge myself to do something more. And so I applied to be president, and I was actually gracious enough to like be accepted in that role. And then it all kind of like blossomed from there. I learned so much just from that year being president, my sophomore year of college, like all of the inner workings of like some of the things within the university, and like just being a leader of like a big group of people, and like not being discouraged when like maybe you don't have as much attendance as you want to. But like that was a really interesting experience, and that was like really helped me become involved and really attached to ALD.
Awesome. Great. Moira?
Yeah, so I decided to join ALD because I was part of a program at my university where I spent my first semester of college abroad. And when I got back to campus, I didn't feel particularly connected to a lot of other people. I felt like I was a step behind in getting to join organizations because most organizations do their membership push in the fall. And ALD is structured differently. And I got the invite really shortly after getting to campus for the first time. And it came highly recommended by my honors college advisor. And it just seemed really like the perfect fit for something to get involved in. And shortly after joining, the call for people to apply to become an officer for the next school year came up. And you know, volunteerism is really important to me, and I had a lot of ideas that I thought I could put into place. So that's why I decided to run for, first it was programming chair. But yeah, that's why I decided to get involved, and I've been really glad, especially, you know, over the past year and a half, to have a chapter that's been very adaptable, and we've been able to do a lot of things virtually and keep remote access there for people. So that's been great.
Great. Yeah, you've all, every chapter here even has answered the call to be adaptable. Has been, and I know Kent State's done a great job of it too. It's been challenging for so many of us, including at the headquarters level. So a good leadership quality is being resilient and sort of bouncing back from maybe something negative or challenging, or you know, an issue that might have come up. So that's overall just a really good leadership skill in life. So when you're thinking about ALD, because I think it's important that all the officers here and students, if you're not officers, maybe you're future officers and leaders in your chapter, you might hit bumps in the road, and that's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the chapter. All is not lost. So bouncing back from that is a good skill. So did you face a challenge or think of a challenge that you maybe faced in your leadership role with ALD, or really maybe if you don't have one with ALD, just with anything else in life? But a challenge you faced and how you solved it. What was sort of a lesson learned? And how you solved a challenge. So let's go there, and let's start with Hannah, if you're okay with that.
Okay, yeah, sure. So the first thing that really popped into my head was my sophomore year of college, where I was in the role of president, and our university ended up shutting down and asking all the students to leave campus around like spring break. So then the rest of our spring semester was online. And that was a very challenging thing for me personally, moving back home and not having access to the resources that I used on campus. And so it was additionally hard because I was also in this leadership role as president, and, you know, people were kind of like looking to me as like, okay, well, like, what are we doing here? Like, how are we moving on? And I'm not gonna lie, like, I did not handle it as best I could. But, you know, that's one of those things where you learn from it and you grow from it. I ended up basically kind of canceling the rest of our events for the semester and canceling everything we had planned, because no one knew we were going to be online. No one knew we were going to have to schedule these virtual things, and everything we had planned was in person. So basically, what I tried to do during that time was just stay in contact with all of our current members and letting them know that like I was there as a resource. I could connect them with whatever they needed. And so, I mean, in a way, it wasn't really a failure. It was just, you know, we changed our plan. You know, we were going to have these events. Instead, we just kind of supported our membership through that time. And then luckily we were able to still get new officers that wanted to run the show then in the next year. And so it was just really great to see that, like, even despite how we ended things in the spring, people were still interested and invested in coming to more events and continuing on with the leadership.
That's great. Great. How about Moira? Do you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think no matter what aspect of life I'm looking at, I think the pandemic has really been the biggest challenge that's, I think for a lot of us, probably defined what college has been like, because it happened so early on in many of our experiences. But I think as challenging as that was, and similarly to what Hannah said, when my university shut down, we really had to take a step back from the things we had planned for the spring semester for ALD, just because it obviously wasn't safe to gather in person, and we didn't really know, much about COVID at all, or about, switching things to virtual access. But I think the thing that became really important when we were moving into the next fall was understanding that not being in person is not the end all be all, that there was still a lot we could do, and a lot of events we could have, both social events and service events, that we could adapt. So one of our programming chairs pulled together like a 5K that we figured out how we could do it, set it up so that people could participate on their own time, doing it in whatever space they had available to them, so that we could still like raise money for a really great cause, but without like putting COVID risk on anyone. So I think just adaptability and understanding that even if in-person events are off the table, that doesn't mean that nothing can be done. So I think that has been the biggest challenge, but also probably the most rewarding, because it's really allowed us to be flexible and creative and do some really interesting things.
So true. Great. How about Jesus? Anything?
I think for me, the biggest obstacle, just to go a little off track from COVID, would be the snowstorm this year. For geographic reference, Huntsville is located about an hour north of Huntsville. So we're very near the coast, the Gulf Coast. It's very warm and humid down here. So never in a million years did we expect it to have like inches of snow, inches of ice, like single digit weather. So I'll say my university did give a lot of good resources for us during the pandemic, or in the snowstorm and the pandemic, but the snowstorm mainly. And in my chapter, we have two different group chats. It's just like a business ALD chat where we say, hey, these events are going on. If you have questions about this, go ahead and send them there. But we also have a social chat where we talk about anything and everything, what's going on in the university, what's going on in our personal lives, just like a family-oriented group chat. And we really use that group chat to maximize our resources to get everyone together, because literally none of us have been, or very few of us have been in a snowstorm ever. So we're like, hey, the dining hall is getting out food here, or there's water here, there's light here. Because basically, also 90% of our town had no water, had no electricity. I know personally, I lived like 3 or 4 days with no water and electricity. It was horrendous. But we really used that chat to like keep each other like there for each other. It's like, hey, I'm here for you. I'm here for your necessities. So we really just put ourselves out there and said, hey, these resources are there. So I think that's one of the biggest obstacles I've had personally as a president, to also manage saying, hey, this is what's going on. This is what we're dealing with. Give us a time to figure out what's going on. But I will give credit to my chapter for supporting each other during that time too.
That's great. Great example. And I think about the ALD headquarters is located, as I mentioned earlier, in Western New York, Central New York. It's sort of a snow belt. I mean, when I first moved from California here, there were 7 feet of snow that Christmas. 7 feet, not inches, feet. So, but for a city, like you're saying, that's just not prepared for, is a totally different thing. So anyway, thanks. James.
Yes, my story actually echoes Moira's and Hannah's story. So it has to do with the pandemic and being on lockdown. So our chapter is what you would call maybe a baby chapter. We started completely online. There was no field of reference for how to conduct meetings, events. So we basically had to start from scratch, and that was difficult. that's difficult on a normal time, let alone having to do it all online. So I feel like my biggest struggle was just getting the team of officers together, so that was something that I placed a little bit of emphasis into, to building this sort of a rapport with other officers, even though we haven't seen each other in person. So that was definitely a challenge, considering that the first week we got inducted into our roles, we had an event scheduled for the very next week. So in a short amount of time, we had to work together and kind of throw on, our very first event. It was just like you mentioned, Eileen. I think that just demonstrates the resilience of students. No matter what obstacle you throw at them, we'll find a way to overcome and kind of adapt, and that's really beautiful as well.
Great. Okay. I'm hoping we have some questions coming. Oh, we do have one. Hey, look at that. What advice would you give to students who want to enter leadership roles and or in leadership roles? So just sort of advice, best advice for upcoming officers. And I'm just going to sort of adapt that. So I think it's two parts. Those who've already expressed interest, advice for them upcoming, they're hopefully going to apply for a position and hopefully get a position. But really also, I think some chapters really struggle with students not expressing interest. Like you just, you put a call out for officers and not enough apply. So if that makes sense, sort of take it in two parts. So advice you have. So let's start with Jesus for this one.
It'd be asking yourself whether A, you really want to do this to better yourself and the organization, or two, do you just want it as a resume builder and not do anything for your organization? I think that's like the first question you really have to ask yourself to see why you're interested in this position for officer. And I think for advice on if you're really interested, is saying, what struggles did I face as a member and how can I make that better? What struggles did my peers face and how can I make that better as an officer? And for the second part of the question is to getting people engaged to become an officer, because I know I had this struggle as well. This presidency, we put out the call last semester in the spring semester saying, hey, ALD officer positions are being open, but nobody really cared to interest into applying. So that's one struggle I had. So I actually had to contact people individually and saying, hey, you put yourself out there in ALD, you stand out amongst the others. Would you be interested in an officer position? And they're like, yeah. I was like, I really didn't think about it because I didn't feel like I had the potential or the qualifications to be. So it's also people having self-doubt and having that, or in wanting to have that reinforcement from a peer or a current officer saying, hey, you're doing good, you can do this. It's also not just having like a mass email. It's like going one-on-one is like, hey, you have potential, try to apply as well. So I think that's one thing that I saw that helped for this year's officers. And I currently have 3 new officers under my belt right now, and they're absolutely amazing.
That's awesome. I'm going to piggyback on that in a second, but let me hear from others first. James, you got anything for that one?
Yeah. So for officers or for people who are already interested in officer roles, my biggest advice is start right now. You don't need a title to be able to be active or to contribute in a meaningful way. I'd say contact your officers, ask them how you can help, start planning out events or participating in them. And, this sort of passion and this sort of passion is very evident, and it really kind of distinguishes you from others. And like what Jesus said, if this is something that you really want to pursue to make a difference and not just kind of tack it on to your resume, nothing's stopping you from starting right now. So that's my biggest advice. And for kind of chapters that find difficulty in maybe attracting applications, I would also have to piggyback off what Jesus said. I'd say start tapping into your members. Oftentimes members just need a push or a motivation from someone else to kind of realize their potential. So I'd say having frequent meetings with your organization, with your group, and just really paying attention to members. Who are the people who show up? Who are the people who are active? and who do I see maybe with potential as well, and start reaching out to them. Yeah, so those are some of my tips.
Awesome. That's great. Moira, anything?
Yeah, I think in terms of like advice for people who want to become officers, I think also don't be discouraged if you aren't coming into it with a lot of experience. I had been in ALD for like a month when I decided I wanted to become an officer. I'd been to like a handful of events. So I definitely was not, you know, necessarily the most involved. And I think what helped me get to where I got was having ideas and knowing like where I wanted to take the position. And even though I didn't have as much of an established record, I think that is what carried me forward. So I think just keeping in mind that like, don't let yourself be discouraged if you think, you know, I don't have enough experience to get into these roles and do them well. I think just like don't self-reject in that sense. And in terms of getting people to be interested in officer positions, I totally agree with what both James and Jesus said. Individual outreach is a really important thing. And also I think as much as you don't want people to just go into leadership positions because they're good for a resume, I think that it can be encouraging to point out to people why this is important and would look good on a resume. Just saying, you know, like these are the skills you're going to develop and here's how these are going to be relevant for your future, can really encourage people and also work out in getting people who are very ambitious and motivated into officer positions. I know that like it was important to me that, you know, I wanted this kind of leadership experience for my future. So I think that necessarily shouldn't always be a deterrent.
Great, thank you. I'm going to piggyback on that too. I have a lot to say. No, I want to just reiterate some stuff. Go ahead, Hannah. How about you?
Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of like shift gears a little bit and give advice to the students who are already in leadership roles. So for those of you who are already in leadership roles, my biggest piece of advice is to use your other officers. No matter what position of leadership you're in, your other officers are there as a resource for you. And then on top of that, use your members too. Like your members, while they may not hold a leadership role per se, like they can still be involved in some of that planning process, some of the like event idea creation. And then finally, like know your student body as well. One of the events we ended up wanting to create was like a March Madness bracket tournament. And, you know, being from UK, that's basketball here is a pretty big deal. So like doing a March Madness like bracket tournament was like going to be a really good way to get our members involved. So like if you know your student body, you can know what events would be of interest to them and like, you know, give them like little rewards, little prizes here and there. And it's like, well, $10 if you like get the most like points on this bracket. So yeah, really know your other officers and use them as a resource. And then in terms of if you're not having great like interest in leadership roles, one thing that I try to do for all of the new leadership roles is be very specific about the job description. I know ALD posts that like leadership like role like description, and I like take that and I adapt it for our university specifically, and I like list out every like thing I can think of that you would do in that leadership position, so people know exactly what they're getting themselves into. And it's not just like a vague, well, like, oh, well, you'll maybe like be involved in this and you'll maybe do that. Like they know exactly what they're getting themselves into, and then they're more likely to do it because they know if they can commit to doing that or not.
Yeah, I'll also throw in that when we like present at a group meeting about like these are the roles, and we provided the contact information of like the current people in those roles so that people could reach out and talk to them one-on-one about like, hey, what is this job like, to see if it would be a good fit for them.
That's great, great. And when I talk in a few minutes about headquarter resources, I'll point out that some of those things, like the list that Hannah mentioned, I'll show you why that is if you want to see descriptions of all the positions you could have within your chapter. So just a couple of nuggets I'm just going to highlight because you guys had great things. while the power of the tap, as I call it, the power of the tap, it's very powerful. So if you're not getting interest, or if you want somebody to step up, just asking them, just pointing it out. It might be something they never thought of. Or I think Moira, you said it, don't self-reject. There might be students in your group that have already said, oh, I could never do that. I want to, but I'm not going to run. I'm not going to put my name in the hat because I don't think I could do it. But the power of the tap, by you tapping them to say, I think you'd be great. You have potential. And even if they've only been a member for a month, as Moira pointed out. And then the last thing I'm just going to reiterate that you all said is telling your story. Talk about your experience and what you got out of it as an officer. And for all of you here, not just our panelists, this is an important piece. And I think that whole resume thing is an important distinction. So there's a difference between, I just want to run so that I could put it on my resume. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to show up to any meetings. And I know none of you would ever do that, but, and it's not like that common, I would hope, but it does happen. Versus, yes, motivating, a motivator for it to be on your resume, because it can be very good and impressive. But my advice about that is to be specific on your resume. Give sort of behavioral examples. Behavioral examples in job interviews are very important. Not just I was president and I ran a meeting, or just I was president of these 6 different organizations, but what are examples of things that you did in that role, goals that you accomplished, programs that you put on, and how many students came to them, or just sort of examples of actual experiences you had, not just the position. So it can be a great resume enhancer, but be specific about the tasks you accomplished and the skills that you gained. I became a better communicator. I managed my time better because of this experience, and this is how I did that. So yeah, great stuff, great examples. So that's all I wanted to add to that. What else? So those are my main questions. Let me do a check on time. I want to see if there are other questions though. Here we go. Let's see. What has been your favorite chapter specific event in the past year? So pick an event. And this time, rather than call on you, just sort of chime in, unmic yourself, and you can raise your hand if you want, or whoever wants to go first. Who wants to go first? What has been your favorite chapter-specific event in the past year?
I might go ahead, actually.
Yeah, go
So yeah, our first semester with ALD on campus has actually been pretty productive. So the way that we structured this is that we had 3 categories. We had social mixers, we had self-development workshops and seminars, but we also had volunteer kind of activities, and that has been my favorite so far. So we had this event called First Years and Little Ears. So here we had first year honor students from our university and paired them with local primary students. And so we had a read aloud. It was all conducted online. There were some technical hiccups here and there, but it was really fulfilling, seeing the kids smile and just interacting with them. So this is definitely something that we piloted last semester, and now we're planning on launching a full scale, maybe 1 month of this event. Yeah, it's something that's really meaningful. Yeah, First Year's Little Ears, love the name. Our chapter advisor, Miss Erica, came up with it. Really, really brilliant. Yeah.
That's awesome. Erica's a rock star too. Thanks. That's great. Who else?
Okay. Me and Jesus were like playing back and forth with the microphone. Yeah, so ours kind of piggybacking off of James's, we actually paired with the other honor societies that are run through the same office that our honor society is run through. It's like the Shelgren Center for Excellence in the Nationally Competitive Awards office. I'm not really sure the distinction. And basically, we paired with that office, and we used their contacts that they had at local nursing homes and retirement facilities, and we were each paired with an elderly patient or individual who was in one of those facilities, and we wrote letters to them, and like with the freedom that they could write letters back to us. I know several people that I know actually got letters written, and like they're like now like pen pals. So what, like, it was just great to see all of like the honor societies in that office coming together to like really like increase the number of like patients and like individuals that we could just interact with and serve in that role. Because, you know, ALD might not have as much involvement, but pairing with those other offices, we were able to get so much more involvement and so many more facilities reaching out to us with names of people we could contact. So that was my favorite event.
Our socials. So job meetings we have as well. We also have social events to not only engage the students as well, but to get them out of their comfort zone and go out into town and whatnot. I think the biggest one I've had as my 2 years as president was a Bahama Bucks social, and that was at the end of the spring semester, where we were like, all right, you know, finals are coming up, let's take a study break. So we set a date and time, and we reserved the Bahama Bucks for the afternoon, and we invited all of our members out to Bahama Bucks. Everyone got a free snow cone on ALD. And that also worked towards an engagement point as well. So all of our socials work towards engagement points. So you have points for meetings, points for volunteer service, and points for thresholds. You get a free cord and have a higher chance of receiving a scholarship from us. Last year, we gave out 10 $1,000 scholarships to our members. So that's another big perk we have with our chapter especially. But really, I think the biggest successes or the biggest turnouts we have are social events, because not only do you get to meet other people as well within your chapter who you might not see at meetings because they have a class or other meetings, but you also get to engage and like do something fun with ALD as well.
I think my favorite thing we did, I think this was like last December, like as the semester was winding down, we did a collection of supplies for a local children's hospital, and we had like a central drop-off point. You could mail in things if you had already gone home, or there was a central drop-off point on campus. And you know, we sent all of our members, the hospital keeps a list of things that they're looking to be donated, and honestly, I was just blown away by people's generosity, and we got a really, really generous amount of donations, and it was just really touching.
That's great. Okay, great ideas, really good. What else? Any other questions? We're doing on time. We're good. Any, okay, so I don't see questions coming in, but let me ask for any parting words. I know you've given advice and stuff, but anything, any sort of last words? A question I didn't ask, how about that? Anything more as we wrap up the panel and move to the next event? Any last words? And I'm gonna leave it to the mic on and off thing to let you guys figure that out. Okay, James raised his hand, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go for it. One of the things I love about ALD is being able to connect with other people from, you know, all around the world. So I would just encourage everybody, you know, reach out to someone today, make an effort to maybe send a message to someone, make a new friend, you know, maybe bounce ideas back and forth. That's the real beauty about, you know, seminars like these or summits like these. So yeah, I'd say make the most out of it.
Love it. Great.
And I know my chapter and me personally, I'll be at the conference this October. So if anyone is going to be there this October in person, I'd absolutely love to meet y'all, and we can like piggyback ideas off what your chapter does, what my chapter does, just to make ALD in general across the world a better organization.
Awesome. Conference, yes.
I guess my piece of parting advice would just be to be confident. If you're in a leadership role and if you're not in a leadership role, be confident in what you're doing. You know, if you have maybe 5 members attend to an event that you planned for maybe 50, like, it's okay. It doesn't mean that that is the end of the world. You just continue on to the next event. You try to make the next event as best as possible, and you make changes as you go. You reach out to those individual members, try to gauge that individual interest, and just push through. You know, we throw around like the word resiliency, but that's really what it is. Be resilient, be able to move on, adapt, and just keep going, be confident.
I think the last thing that I'd say is, as we move back to in-person things, I'm seeing a lot of organizations, not ALD on my campus, because I think they're more, they've kept things online, but I'm seeing a lot of other organizations on my campus just knee-jerk go back completely in person. And I think that is leaving behind disabled, chronically ill, high-risk students. And I think big advice, don't do that. Even if you're not aware that you have those students in your organization, I guarantee you do. And it's really, really, really important to keep that kind of access available, or else you're going to be leaving behind a chunk of people.
That's really going to make, yeah, great point. I can tell you that ALD headquarters, we are going to continue to offer a full lineup of online ceremonies, just for that purpose, just to have that as an option. If you want to do a hybrid or do an in-person and an online, we're here to do everything online to continue that, just because you just don't know who's able to be in person and where it's comfortable. And the variants, come on, these variants. And by the way, all the variants for COVID are called Alpha, Lambda, and Delta. Not too happy about that. Well, I cannot thank you for enough. This has been so great. You've all just been wonderful sharing your expertise. I really appreciate the time and your work with ALD and your support of the chapter and all you're doing on your campuses is just phenomenal. So thank you so much for being here. Thanks, everyone.